The Game Philosopher. Today I wanted to talk about something different because, well, I've been a little behind. It's not just because I've been addicted to VR, and as you can tell, I have that little VR headset in the back. Well, the case for it anyway. But not only have I been behind, uh, there has been some really weird stuff going on, and it's been sending me back. And what I wanted to talk about, actually, is from partial inspiration from the game Rome 2, which has released a thing on the rise of the Republic, and that's a very good show, or that's a very good part of Roman history, because it's how the Romans kicked out their dictator and then how they started from Italy and expanding onward, and it's really interesting. So now I had two choices to do today. One, talk about politics or Roman tactics. That will be for a later video. Two, and this is for this one, talk about why it's important to study Roman and Greek poetry and plays. And what I have here is actually a farce comedy, or a group of farce comedies by Plautus. I also have tragedies by Seneca on my bookshelf too. And I have a few Ovid poems and a few Virgil poems. Well, actually, just one. Then I have the classic Homer poems and some Sophocles. And I enjoy reading these things, and there's a good reason why. A lot of the times when you look at ancient poetry and then ancient philosophy, a lot of times they intersect. In fact, sometimes philosophy has told us poetry, such as the case with Lucretius and On the Nature of Things. On the other hand, you even have philosophers taking from poems and saying that this is, as the poet says, to give a little bit more interest to the argument. Now, also, one of the things that we have to look at is eloquence, and the Cicero talked a lot about eloquence. Ovid was a master of eloquence. Socrates drew a lot from Homer and many others. Well, Socrates wasn't really a master of eloquence, to be honest. He was very eloquent, but only because of his virtue and his way of questioning and conversation methods, which were all about his wit. It wasn't really a thing of elegance. Now, for a lot of interest, the Meditations of Marcus Aurelius actually is a really great book, because if you read a lot of poetry, you notice a lot of things that Marcus Aurelius does here in his meditations. One of the big things is he uses these really interesting examples and very interesting aphorisms, which are not only telling us the whole entire message, but doing it in a way which you can go aha and remember. For example, the whole entire idea that you will be seen as a god by those who now see you as a beast, or a baboon if you return to your love of principles and the worship of reason. Another big one is the whole entire notion of what's good for the bees is also good for the beehive. And Marcus Aurelius has a lot of them, so that's one big thing. And so really, I'd say that poetry is really important to understand if you want to read ancient philosophy. But now, what about the more current ones? Well, Heidegger is someone who comes to mind, because he talks about the thinker as a poet. And you also have Wittgenstein, who talks about how the language draws a picture and that's how we understand things through a picture, which is created by the way we describe things. And what poetry does is it actually gives us more vivid ways to describe the more abstract concepts which we can find in the poetry. Now, the big thing is that philosophy, a lot of times, and there are some schools that get away with it, like analytic philosophy a lot of times does it, where things get bland. And the reason why is because people don't want to look at the wit, they want to look at the facts, then they want to look at the arguments. And now I'm not saying that you shouldn't look at arguments and think about the arguments for the superficial poetry, but rather that what happens a lot of times is that if you say all these different facts and you put them all together, people are not going to listen. In fact, people will actually draw you out, or they won't be entertained. In fact, even Kikero and his talk about Roman philosophy that you can find, I forgot exactly which book, but you can actually read it within the anthology called on the Art of Living and Dying Well. He actually talks about the big thing about Roman poetry, philosophy, which is that it lacks all eloquence, and he pretty much describes Anglo-American philosophy to a T. So without eloquence, that you're just not entertained by it, and that they're ignorant of the whole entire concept, that pretty much no one can actually bear it, and that's a big thing about philosophy, is it's all about bearing things. Now, another interesting thing is that you have Soren Kierkegaard. This is Either Or. This is a really great book, and he actually talks a lot in very poetic detail, and you can actually be sure to find some really good examples of what happens when a philosopher has wit from the study of a poetic discourse. For example, as everyone knows, there are insects which die in the moment of fertilization. Thus it is with all joy. Life's supreme and most voluptuous moment of pleasure is attended by death. Another one. Alas, the door of fortune does not open inward, so that one can force it by charging at it. It opens outwards, and so that there's nothing one can do. Also, you have the interesting idea, I feel as a chess man, when the opponent says that piece cannot be moved. Now, the thing about poetry, poetic statements that needs to be warned, is that when we're looking at poetic statements and poetic wit, poetry versus philosophy, that the whole entire art of reason is about thinking very clearly. Poetry, on the other hand, poetic language, conveys the emotion. You're insinuating, you're not really saying this is the case, you're just saying this is like this and that's like that, drawing this picture that people could understand where you're coming from. So really, when you're using these poetic statements that you come up with, you should be like the very careful wolf who hunts its prey, always looking about for the perfect time to strike. Now, the wolf does not try to just go out there and do it. The wolf sets up a very nice little plan, and then circles around with its pack. Then they attack as a group. The same way, your argument should be, you have these facts, present all these facts, take this poetic wit, you put it in there, and all ties together nicely so that you entertain people, they listen to facts, and what happens is that people get a pretty good idea of what you're saying, and that's how you do it. So this is Game Philosopher. Thank you for watching. I recommend that you read some Ovid, some food Donald Plutarch, Ovid, Plautus, and any other poet or playwright you can get your hand on. It's very wonderful. And I'll do another video on this soon.